Welcome to Stories from History's Edges. I'm Odelia Reno, and today I have a thought provoking idea for you, one we rarely talk about because it feels too obvious to question. Nobody is born believing anything. Not God, not gods, not heaven, not hell, not sin, not salvation, not karma, not enlightenment. Babies come out knowing exactly two things: how to demand food and how to panic when they do not get it fast enough. Everything else arrives later, delivered by adults who already made their own deals with the universe and now want some continuity because it makes them feel safe. Belief is not discovered. It gets handed down the same way names do, or accents, or recipes that everyone swears are ancient. By the time choice even becomes a possibility, the decision has already been made and defended on your behalf. Belief is inherited, and look at how early the process starts. Historically, circumcision shows up long before monotheism gets organized. The earliest clear evidence comes from ancient Egypt, where wall reliefs and mummies show circumcised men as early as the 3rd millennium BCE. In Egypt, circumcision appears to have been tied to purity, priesthood, and social status. Not everyone was circumcised. It marked elites, temple servants, and those considered ritually clean enough to approach the gods. This already tells you something important. Circumcision was not originally about hygiene or health. It was about who belonged closer to the sacred and who did not. From there, the practice spreads across parts of Africa and the ancient Near East, often linked to initiation, masculinity, and group identity. In many cultures, circumcision was done at puberty, not infancy. It marked a transition from boyhood to manhood, a moment when pain and blood signaled readiness to enter adult society. The meaning was social before it was theological, and the body changed because the person's status changed. Judaism takes this older practice and does something radical with it. It moves circumcision from adolescence to infancy and ties it directly to a covenant with God. In the Hebrew Bible, circumcision becomes the physical sign of an agreement between God and Abraham, a permanent mark that says this body belongs to this God and this people. What matters here is not just the act, but the timing. By circumcising infants, Judaism removes choice from the equation entirely. You are born into obligation before you can understand what obligation means. That shift is enormous. Circumcision stops being a rite of passage and becomes an identity stamp. It is no longer about becoming something. It is about already being something, whether you like it or not. Islam inherits circumcision from the same Near Eastern world, though the Quran itself does not explicitly command it. Instead, circumcision becomes anchored in prophetic tradition and communal practice, closely tied to ideas of purity, cleanliness, and belonging to the Ummah. Like Judaism, Islam places circumcision early in life, reinforcing the idea that faith is not primarily a personal discovery, but a family and communal inheritance. The cut says you are inside before you can ask what inside means. Christianity, interestingly, rejects circumcision as a requirement, and that rejection is deeply theological. Early Christian leaders argue that physical circumcision is replaced by spiritual circumcision, that faith rather than flesh marks belonging. This is not a rejection of marking the body so much as a rebranding of how the mark works. Water replaces the blade. The child is still claimed early, enrolled before consent, but the symbol just becomes less visibly permanent. Over time, circumcision takes on new justifications layered on top of old ones. In the modern era, especially in Western societies, medical arguments come into play. hygiene, disease prevention, and reduced infection risk. What matters is not whether circumcision can have medical benefits in specific contexts, but how eagerly those benefits are used to rationalize a practice that long predates modern medicine. The health argument often functions as a retroactive alibi for a ritual whose real power has always been symbolic. Because circumcision is not just about health, if it were, it would not carry this much emotional weight. It would not survive outside clinical necessity. It would not be defended with stories about identity, tradition, and divine command. Circumcision persists because it does something very few rituals do as efficiently. It binds belief to the body in a way that cannot be undone without consequence. Once belief leaves a mark, doubt becomes complicated. Circumcision teaches the same lesson everywhere it appears. Your body is not entirely yours. It belongs partly to a story older than you, stronger than you, and uninterested in your consent. The pain is brief, and the earlier it happens, the less likely you are to question why it happened at all. That is why circumcision has lasted for thousands of years while countless other rituals disappeared. It solves a core problem for belief systems. How do you make sure identity sticks? You carve it in. It is also enrollment. Every one of these moments is a lifelong subscription activated before the user can read the terms, let alone cancel. Nobody asks the baby what they think because belief systems are not built to survive early questioning. Belief works best when it feels like air rather than an argument. If you grow up inside it, it doesn't feel imposed, it feels obvious. That is the trick. By the time you are old enough to ask questions, the questions already come preloaded. Why do we do this instead of doing this? Why are they wrong instead of are we right? Doubt does not arrive as curiosity, it comes as guilt. Leaving feels like betrayal. The cost of walking away has been carefully padded with fear, family disappointment, social exile, and the quiet anxiety that maybe everyone else knows something you missed. No God needs to threaten you with lightning when belonging does the job more efficiently. This is not a conspiracy. It is an optimization problem that belief systems solved a long time ago. Persuading adults is expensive. Enrolling infants is cheap. If you shape the world before the mind wakes up, the mind will spend the rest of its life defending that shape as natural, inevitable, and divinely ordered. The most successful gods do not wait for reason. They arrive before language, memory, and choice, and they make sure the first story you hear feels like the only story that ever existed. Thank you for listening. If this way of looking at belief feels uncomfortable, that is kind of the point. This is exactly where my book, Not the Same God, begins. The book looks at how gods are made, how they survive, and how they compete, not as abstract ideas, but as systems that have learned how humans actually work. It is part story, part history, part quiet autopsy of the beliefs we assume are timeless and innocent. If you are curious about why the gods care so much about getting to you before you can say no, my book is waiting for you. You can find it on Amazon or get your autographed first edition copy on my website.